the Saturday morning roundtable, where we discuss our projects and how we can best help each other overcome the obstacles to get them into the world. Anyone want to start?
Yeah, so I guess I could start with a project update. So on Reason Score, I'm working on a video script. Just lost track of my words. Yeah, so I'm gonna write out the script, and then I'm probably gonna want to post it in the GameBee projects group for feedback, and my Canonical Debate Lab group for feedback, and see if before I actually go to make it, try and get some human feedback, and then I've tried to reach out to some people in the Pitbull ban debate, and I have not gotten a response from any people experts on the wanting to repeal the ban, but I haven't reached out to a lot of them yet, so I got to reach out some more. And then hopefully Adriel and I will be able to work on doing some fact checking using our proposed systems and see how it goes. So that's kind of the plan.
Cool. Adriel, do you want to go? Or Shiloh?
Sure. Yeah, I can go.
You can nominate me at any point.
So I had my session with Billy last week. That was a good one. Went over, we started with the science discussion part of it, but ended up branching out into a few different things. And other than that, I've also been working on the specs to get the MVP created. I had a bit of a shift in the last week where up until now I'd been sort of thinking like, yeah, I guess it'll be nice if I have a prototype. And then it sort of clicked. I'm like, yeah, it's not optional. Like it was, I guess, kind of weird to ask for like to do a Kickstarter and do stuff like that without actually having some sort of a prototype to be like, look, here's the first part of it. Here's what we're actually building, instead of trying to build a community around like the thoughts of maybe one day having an application that could do these things. So I've been working on the specs. I actually had a good after call chat yesterday with Matush on like the possible software stack and stuff like that. So it's been good, and that's my next step, is to actually get the MVP coded and online. And when we talk about that a bit later, I might want to pick Shiloh and I guess probably more accurately also Bentley's brain, because he's actually a developer, to get some feedback on software stack and whatnot.
Yeah.
All right, I can go, and then Shiloh can go if she wants. There's no unmute button yet. For solution raising in particular this week, we had two of them. Was Wednesday the meta conversation on like we had energy this week, and I believe we had energy, and then we also had on Thursday a GameBee mapping one with Matus and James Weir as well. Both of them are really cool. And next, the possibility in the pandemic that I do at 8:30 every morning is done as of tomorrow. And then I'm going to be concentrating on just doing at least one solution raising live online, and then whatever other ones are also there, as well as adding the process raising. But I'm giving myself a couple of weeks to figure that out, because I was going to add two other conversations, and I realized that TogetherTec is my technology one, and my Omega group is my like spirituality, the dance one. So I'm like, oh, I already have them. I don't need to add them in and put more stuff on my plate. So writing out some stuff over the next week, including asking for people to come and be part of that. And Raymond had suggested, had expressed interest, and then I was trying to recruit Shiloh as well to find a morning that works to have a process raising, if that's something that is in alignment. So that is what I've been up to and what I'm going to be up to in the next week.
Hi, for my project, I've been really busy with other stuff this week, but I did at least reach out to Raymond and hopefully be able to talk with him about it. Mostly because he's already part of the meta currency in Holochain. So I feel like I can probably express what I'm trying to say easier because he's basically doing the same thing. So I'm kind of excited about that. I don't know when we'll talk, but at least that's like finally a possible connection. So pretty excited, and I really appreciate you guys holding just the space, you Jubilee, but all of you, just to make stuff like that happen. It's really awesome. So thank you.
Cool.
I don't know if anyone had anything that put them in the hot seat. If anybody does, if they want to be in the hot seat and want to do a want us to crowdsource a solution to their issues. Otherwise, I guess we could have an open conversation until something comes up.
I can start with sort of it's fairly technical, I think, but we probably don't have to dive too deep on it. Just interested to hear if anyone has any input. I was doing some research on possible software stacks for the WikiLegion MVP so that I can actually go out and hire a coder for it, because that's a pretty important part when you're hiring a coder, is saying what you have to know in order to actually be able to code it. I went and did some research, and it seemed like Ruby on Rails was probably where I was headed, because it seemed like it was sort of easier to prototype and maybe not quite as flexible and fast, but for prototypes, I don't think that's terribly as important. And again, the end goal is, or I guess the end thing is, I'm not super attached to this being a long-term prototype. If it only lasts for a year or two and then gets to the point where it builds an audience and gets enough money to build it properly from scratch, that's totally fine with me. I'm just interested to hear if anyone has any input on software stacks.
So my suggestion on that is, if you're not tied to a software stack, I think it's okay to go out and say, this is what I want to do. Because like you said, there's a lot of software stacks that would work. And if you're not partial, then you can have a broader opportunity to hire people. And then
Right.
whichever one they choose, you just kind of go with. Because a lot of times it really doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
My feeling on Ruby on Rails is it's more of a it's not I guess for me, prototypes are a little bit easier in some sort of front-end framework, which is like Angular, React, or Vue.
Right.
Well, Ruby on Rails is more of a back-end thing. So the main difference is that when you click on something or do something, it goes all the way back to the server and
Right.
back to the front end every time.
I guess I should clarify, prototype probably isn't as accurate for what I'm building anymore. It's like, I guess, alpha.
Viable product, really, right?
Like actually trying to do it. So there actually should be a back end, and there's actually going to be, tables and things to link and data to aggregate, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it definitely should have a back end. I guess me personally, I wouldn't choose any tech that is not a single page application.
What
I
do you
don't
mean?
know if I have a good justification for that. Sorry.
Sorry, what do you mean by it's a single page application?
Yeah, single page application. That's Ruby. I'm sorry. That's React, Vue, Angular, and there's quite a few others in that space. And what they are is that it's mostly written in JavaScript, and most of the stuff happens on your front end, and the back end is just an API. Where Ruby on Rails tends to be like, we're creating a whole application here, and it's kind of tied to the front end because you're generating HTML and sending it up to the web browser. And to me, it just seems like Ruby on Rails and anything that's not a single page application feels kind of old and kind of tightly coupled.
So a single page application, is that like where you would never see the page fully reload, and it's just kind of always pulling in, like Facebook now? It's mostly a single page app if you're just scrolling for 7 years and it keeps going.
And Facebook wrote React to be able to do that.
Okay.
And then they open sourced React, and that's what Reason Score is written in. Although today for even quicker prototypes, I think Vue is quicker development, because like you said, you're doing over an MVP. I think Vue is really the easiest to do quick development in. Okay. And then Angular is a good option.
I guess, are they easy as easy to develop in. I know a lot of the stuff that I watched or read on Ruby on Rails said that like its key differentiator was that, you know, you could get like a single person that knew it and you could do it in 3 weeks what it used to take a small team a year to do, because they would just have to do a bunch of back-end boring crap that you can just, you know, throw some Ruby on Rails at and like, look, I've got like a blog that I made in 15 minutes.
So it depends on when those videos are from. If they're from 2 years ago, then yes. More recently, what you do is you choose a backend like Firebase or Firestore. And what that is, that's a pre-built generic API. So you don't have to write a backend. So far in Reason Score, I haven't written a backend except for doing a little bit of security.
Okay.
And it's a fully running app with multiple stuff. So if you have some sort of abstracted backend, like Firestore, Firebase, and there are others, then you don't have that whole thing where you have to write a database and then you have to write an API layer. That's all kind of built in. So if you're using one of those, then yeah, Angular, React, and stuff. But I guess that's true, because one thing that Ruby gives you is the ability is you could actually just write the code and it'll kind of build the database in the back end. And there's a couple of technologies similar to that that do that. But I think either way is that you could just kind of give some examples of what you want, and you may already have that even in your prototypes you've done in Knack and some of the other documentation you have. So really you just kind of can put that out there and say, get some kind of quotes, and maybe even go with the tech that most of the people responding are saying. If they all come in and say, oh, I do, if you get 5 or 6 React people. Right now, React is probably the most popular. Vue is probably the easiest to develop in for quicker stuff. React and Angular have been built for more enterprisey stuff recently. They started out pretty simple.
So you said Angular and React were more enterprise, and then Vue was more not?
Vue, yeah, right.
Okay, cool. And Vue, is that actually spelled Vue, or is that just VU?
VUE.
VU, okay. I thought I'd spelled that. I know it's not spelled right because it's technology, and we never spell anything right in technology.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess React is React, Angular is Angular, and Vue is VUE. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Sorry.
And those will, if you put just something out there, that's mostly what you're going to get, and then you will get Ruby on Rails, and then you'll get some Microsoft people doing .NET, which their framework is very similar to Ruby on Rails now, not as fast or as easy. So Ruby on Rails, I think, would be better than the Microsoft stack.
Okay. I was going to start there simply because every company I've worked in has been .NET, so it's like I'm used to, but I don't want to tie up the whole project with that. So.
It would be a little slower. They're trying to bring it into the efficiency of Ruby on Rails, but I don't think they're there yet.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I like that. So I'll just come up with like a fairly basic, probably some mockups and some basic requirements. Post the job on Upwork and see what the response comes back with. Like for both the quote for how much effort they think it'll take, and then also what technology. Because if all of the all the Reacts come back and it's $5,000, and the Rubies come back and it's $800, it might be like, well,
right. Yeah, and the other thing is the suggestions I give on this, which I haven't hired anyone in a while, but it's to try and also get the smallest thing. So you might even say, make sure that they're doing iterative development. So you say, I want to, let's just get a login screen working. Or it's better actually to start with some actual functionality without even a login screen. So just like, let's see this one screen and show that the data persists to the data store and back before you move on to the next thing. Yeah.
I guess my concern is that on Upwork, I kind of want to start with a mini waterfall just to have the person prove that they can do it. Because if, anybody can just make a page to display information, I could probably do that if I dedicated a weekend to it. But then where to go from there? Well, we're like, okay, great, you built that. How long did that take you? How long was it going to take you to get you to this point? And I might not arrange it that way. They'll probably still code it in Agile, but like the project will probably be like, get it to this point, and then you'll get X dollars.
What is waterfall?
So waterfall is the old school of development where you would like plan out the whole thing. Like, here's how every page is going to work. Here's how, and then people would sit down and code for a year, and then you would come up with an application. Agile is what Bentley's talking about.
Okay.
You start
I know
with
Agile.
yeah, the bits and pieces so that you can adjust as necessary. But physically, no one does waterfall anymore.
One of the things I like about doing it the way Bentley suggested, without knowing any of the stuff you guys were talking about, is that on Upworks, if you say you want it on Ruby on Rails, everyone's a Ruby on Rails expert. Whereas if you put out that it's this, this, or that, then you're going to get people who are any of those things, and they're going to have projects that they did, and their favorite project might be the one that they're like, oh yeah, I could do it in Ruby on Rails, but their good projects are on, one of the other ones.
Yeah,
and so seeing, are they actually, which one do they choose to do it in? What do they do their best work in? And seeing that it's actually a better picture of, hey, I want this done. What do you feel most comfortable doing it in?
Right.
And then also asking them for MVP, right? Like, what do you think is, there's the waterfall. What do you think is an MVP we could do to start testing and make it agile?
Yeah, I guess that's probably a better way to phrase it. The actual development would still be done in Agile. Just the first chunk of the project is being framed as, I guess it's still not even waterfall, but like more a milestone. So it's like you have to get here before we're really considering, like, is this started? Did you do what you said you were going to do?
Yeah, it's determining what that destination is. I think if someone can do a vertical slice of a complex feature, then they can do everything else. Right. And it also can give you a bit of a timing concept. Now, to your point, yeah, like a login screen and a generic page is probably not a good example. It'd probably be good to take a complex feature, something that differentiates your app from the other apps, and say, let's do a vertical slice of this. You don't even have to have login working. You might need some sort of identity depending on the feature, but here's the one feature. And yeah, that's probably a good way to test it.
My initial goal was just to have like sort of a list of people, organizations, and then their positions in those organizations, and sort of a really basic way to display, like, here's people, and here's, on that page, show places they've worked. For just like a really basic, right, here's your database, here's the back end, if you can even call it that yet, and then here's the front end on, it's just a single page that lists people. You can click to view them, see their page, hit back, go to a different person, that kind of thing. And
although if you have a complex feature, though, I do remember now that on a lot of projects, a lot of times it's best to hit the riskiest piece first. Because first of all, you kind of know whether they have the chops to do the whole thing, and also you've eliminated that risk before you invest more money.
True.
I'm trying to think of what the riskiest part of yours. It might be the voting, some of the kind of interactive voting mechanisms.
Yeah, because that will end up sort of evolving over time.
That's true.
And a lot of it is going to be based on how the data ends up. Like, that's kind of, my current goal is to get it like 30 to 40% of the way there. So definitely not have the full database, and then to start like, okay, where can we first bolt on some of these voting pieces? Where I think, it's probably going to be like, I'm thinking, because the content review is going to come fairly early. And I think it's first going to come in the form of you vote on what category legislation is, and then the sort of sister feature of, now, based on how you voted on a bunch of legislation and how that legislation was categorized, we can now categorize your voting history. That's a dog drinking at my feet on mute.
Yeah, because that'd be interesting. Because some of the challenges that people kind of run into is some people don't know how to structure a database properly. So they could store that data, but you wouldn't be able to have that kind of interaction and linking if they don't do it right.
And that part I'm super comfortable with designing a database and that whole thing. I mean, an expert might have some stuff to teach me on like metadata and stuff, but like actual application data, I'm good there.
And if you want me to do some code reviews or stuff like that, I'd be happy to if you want to show me. Are you going to have all this on an open GitHub account, or are you going to keep it closed?
It'll probably be closed to start with, and then I'll figure out sort of like, as the project actually launches, if and what should be should be open. Because I imagine that some of it will end up being open.
Yeah. So there's a link to my GitHub on my bentleydavis.com. So if you ever want to invite me and ask me to take a look, I'm happy to. I am very picky, though, and I have to keep remembering that there's multiple ways to solve a problem. So sometimes they irritate developers because I'm like, well, you should have done it this way. And they're like,
Oh,
well, that's not the way I wanted to do
I,
it.
I have that same challenge. I used to work with a developer as a product manager, and then I left to work in a different department, and we ended up having lunch because we had like a work thing outdoors, and she came and talked to me. She's like, when you're product manager, I hated you so much. She's like, but now that you're gone, I miss you because like you knew what you wanted.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, that's kind of nice. I'll choose to focus on that part. But yeah, that's good. I like starting with the like a fairly open thing and posting that to Upwork and seeing what they come back with, both for like seeing how the cost gets tied to it and just how many responses are for each thing. And I mean, that might even be worth to sort of take those stats and then to talk about it with you or Matoush or someone and say like, hey, does this make sense? The interesting thing is that Matoush actually knows Ruby on Rails. So that was one of the nice things. I was talking to him, and he's able to go into, he's done it in the past, and recommended DigitalOcean to look into as an alternative to Amazon to start off with. But I mean, it sounds like they don't have the full stack options that Amazon does. So I think that may have been based on using Ruby. So if I don't end up going that way, it might not work. But I'll have to look.
Awesome.
That was good.
And it's a non-tech person. Is Ruby on Rails owned by Amazon?
No.
I don't think. No, I mean, Amazon owns a lot, but Amazon is kind of the de facto like hosting provider now because of their elastic cloud and everything. Like Netflix uses them, a bunch of things use Amazon. That's where a big chunk of their profit comes from now, actually.
Amazon and Microsoft are the players. Yeah, actually, Amazon does not. Their major way of making money is not selling things on their website. The major way they make money is through cloud services.
Yeah, which is interesting because Amazon was known for years for never being profitable, and it was because they always spent their profit building other things. Yeah. And like that was one of the things they did was they spent huge money building their elastic cloud. I think a lot of people were like, "You're so stupid. Why are you spending all your money?" Well, turns out to
be a good bet. Yeah.
Although not necessarily the place during the roundtable, but how Tesla and Amazon and all of those operate on a deficit, yet still the people are worth billions of dollars is really weird. But that's so.
Well, we're seeing the outcome of like what that risk can be now with this, where like if you operate in that way, you have zero profit, zero margin, like you have no disposable cash. So if you have a problem, sorry, you're screwed. We found out, okay, well, if you operate properly, you should have some amount of money in the bank. You should be profitable. But then those companies get taxed and they don't do as well as a company that pretends to not be profitable, spends all this money, has no cash in the bank, and then what do we do if we hit a wall as a society? We'll have to stay inside for 2 months. Whoops.
Yeah, I mean all of it. But it's like how are you the richest man in the world? Or is he yet? Is Bezos the richest now? And it's like your thing runs at a deficit. It's like because how could you can't compete with Amazon anyway, even if they are profitable, right? The fact they make it on that scale. Imagine competing with them when they have all the tax breaks. They get to run at a deficit and still be billionaires. It just makes makes sense under an investment standpoint and not at all under a consumer or like bigger game A strategy.
Yeah. Or like stability and and long term actually having this work for a couple decades.
Well, yeah, because also like if you're running at a deficit anyway, why not pay your workers properly? Why not pay them the proper amount?
Whoa, hold on there, Jubilee.
That's too far.
That's
we don't want people in the lower rungs to have money that they can spend at businesses that will, go into the economy. That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
They might actually think for themselves. You can't do that.
Real work gets paid real money while you guys are all in the cloud pretending that ones and zeros are like, it's fun. It's fun. You have billions of ones and zeros, but don't let people eat and pay their rent and have proper health care. Yeah,
And all the money goes to like the top 1% who don't spend it and just hoard it offshore. It's working great. I don't know what you're talking about.
We're talking about Amazon, though. I was like, well, they can keep their cloud then. That'll be the one thing that's profitable. It'll be the last thing we pry out of their cold, dead hands before they go into the ether. Like, great, until we can create that.
And their cloud is quite good, but it's also like there are definitely competitors to it, and like there's no reason not to compete in that space. There's a lot of people who don't want to go with Amazon because they're like, I don't want this behemoth. Like, I don't want to support them. Their pricing is confusing. Like their pricing calculator, they do so much. So like, I'm fairly technical. I went to go and do the pricing, and like I couldn't get the pricing for database storage to go less than $3,000. And I'm like, I know it can. I just don't know how to make it. I told that to Machu. She's like, yeah, no. For what you're doing, the whole thing should cost you less than $20 a month. Like not including coding, but like just the account and the VPS, the virtual private server. It's like, oh, okay, that's a lot more in line with what I was wanting to pay to start with.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I'd go with the virtual private server. Yeah.
Which I actually hadn't heard that acronym before. He kept saying VPS, and I was like, what is a VPS? But it made sense. I was like, oh, okay, so it's like the server version of a virtual machine.
Yeah.
All right, that was it. Thank you for that brief, quite technical interlude, but that was useful.
Any other hot seat issues people want to discuss?
Not particularly. Still working out how to phrase stuff for the solution for the process raising, but I don't think that's something we can source. Because it'd be like writing it out and figuring out the language and doing when I'm at like the very beginning stages, like what is a process raising? That's what we're figuring out. But how to explain that in a way so that, it gets the right people, i.e. people that want to work through that process and figure that out. I don't quite yet know, but.
Yeah, I guess my only thing is working on that video, and I'm about halfway through the script, and yeah, my ideas aren't solid enough that anyone would be able to understand it enough to give any feedback yet, I think.
You want any early feedback on that? I mean, I've been probably making videos for too long. I probably should have started with the prototype, but that ship has sailed. But if you want any feedback there, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I'll definitely be posting it in Game B, and it'll just be the script. Because I mean, I can make visuals, and I might make some if I get bored and want to do it, because that's the fun part. But writing out the script's the hard part for me, so
okay.
That's what I'm doing.
And this is for a video?
So this is for Reason Score on explaining how the math works, because I've got a lot of people saying, oh, well, that algorithm has to have some really powerful AI, so the people are convinced. I'm like, no, it's just if you have one pro and one con and they're equally important, they cancel each other out. It's like, your 6-year-old does this in their own mind naturally. It's nothing hard about it. But people,
right? Yeah.
Until they see how it works on the inside, it's hard for them to imagine it being something simple.
But so the idea is the end result is going to be a video explaining that?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing that might help that I've done in the past with videos is do your script, but then like put it into something like Google Slides so that you can just say, here's like a rough visualization of what I'll be showing when I go over this part of the text, and then a separate slide.
Yeah.
Just so that you can sort of show like, because I know trying to read a script about how to explain math, that's going to be that's going to be difficult to process for, I think.
The way I've done it right now is I have a table and split up into 2 columns, and one is here's what the person is saying, and then a written description of kind of what's visually happening on the screen, and visually it's pretty simple.
Okay, yeah, that works. Just so that there's some some context, and I'll be talking about this and then showing this.
Yeah.
Cool.
At first I had it written out in paragraphs. I'm like, oh, that doesn't work.
I did that too the first time, and it was just a wall of text that was boring to everyone else but me. So I'm like, all right, this is not going to work well.
Yeah, but a couple rough draft pictures wouldn't take that long at all to do. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe
Of course,
that's
it
like
would.
step 2. Like
Yeah.
step 1 is just your text of that grid, and then step 2 is, okay, in this cell I'm showing this. Here's a super rough mock-up.
Yeah.
See if it makes sense.
Of course, it wouldn't take me that long to actually do the video part, just because that's, I don't know. You tend to end up fiddling a lot when you get in there, so maybe it would.
Easier for people to comment on a video, but to make a video, depending on how much of your time it takes, in order to get people's feedback, in order to redo the video with the feedback, I don't know how much, like, is this, 15 hours of work or an hour of work? And then when you get the feedback to implement that, is it a new 15 hours of work, or is it just 2 hours to, you know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah, the way I'm going to do it this time is I'm going to write it up in JavaScript so that I like record the audios into separate little clips and the animation, so that if I have to go in and change a piece, I can just go in and change that piece and re-render the whole video. So that'll be nice. I've been wanting to do that for a while. But there could be whole sections that I take out because they're just distracting people. Like part of it's explaining the math, but I found myself when I was writing it going there and explaining why people disagree when they both look at the same content. So that whole section may not make it into the final thing, so I really don't want to spend too much time building it if people go, that's a little confusing. Of course, I imagine most likely I'll put the script out there and people will either comment or say, I can't picture this in my head, so you'll have to make it before you. So I'm not expecting a ton of feedback, but It helps me to work through it anyways.
Yeah. I might be able to share some of my early attempts at infographics with you, because I think we're trying to explain a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
Jubilee, are you, I know you're still working on the process for solution raising, but are you kind of thinking of a video introduction and process solution or process setup? That sounds like a good way to deliver your idea.
Video is always a great way to deliver basically any idea. It's that I don't have the ability to make that video. Like I can't add the images. I can't even do a script in one format. So it's like my current version, until someone else can edit and wants to edit those, choicer ones, is to basically keep recording until I can get it into a 5-minute one. And I might do something like that on process raising as best my current ability as I can, knowing that I'm never going to, I don't know what never, but as an individual, I'm never going to get to what Bentley's doing. It just doesn't work for me. I've tried so many times that just going live is, but yeah. And that is part of like bringing people together to have the conversation for process raising. I need to do like one little video to explain that, to bring the people in, or a one-off conversation, right? Like a conversation with Raymond, a conversation with you. And then when we're together, if we wanted more people, that could be something we create, right? What is this? How do we bring people in? Is the video the best place?
And I think that you're, I don't like to use the word brand, but kind of your image is a live type thing. So even a short, just talking video to describe your process, I think is nice and helpful. So.
Thank you. I will try. It just I'm not Bentley, both in skill and also in I feel like Bentley would deliver it. Like even Bentley doing my way would come off better than me doing Bentley's way isn't happening. It's like, oh, let me give the 5 different reasons that this is happening. And it's like, how do I explain process raising? We could do a contest, we could do a show, you know what I mean? And that's kind of having other people to say, here's everything we could do. What is one thing we could do that's a process to create one? And then let's try it and let's
I mean,
agile.
This seems like a great candidate process for, how do you make videos? What tools do you use? How does the script building work?
Interesting.
There's a lot that goes into making videos, right? Like is this a video like this? Is it, and infographic style explainer?
Yeah, although I think a lot of times just a person speaking passionately is very powerful.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the only reason I'm getting value of all this other stuff is that I am trying to explain something very technical. But I think that wouldn't be I think Jubilee, you have a great skill set for what you're trying to do. So I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. And
someone coming alongside later on and just doing a little editing might help. But yeah.
Well, the other thing that is nice is you just doing these videos and talking about it multiple times. Even if you just record where you've talked about it, in a month, you just go watch all those bits and pieces and these surrounding conversations and be like, ooh, I like that part. I like that part. I like that part. Oh crap, a script. Like when I have problems
it's work for my brain.
Writing a script, there's times where I just cut, like, I don't even go live, but I just sort of start talking and do the conversation and record myself on video and then go back later and watch it. And I say things that I'm like, oh, I couldn't have written that. It just had to fall out of my mouth and be like, all right, that's out there now. I guess that works.
Yeah, that happens all the time, and it happens more often when, like, I'm talking to mom on Skype, and it, you know what I mean? It's not recorded in any way, and it's like, why in this moment can I explain this? And it's generally also, like, when I am frustrated sometimes, and I'm trying, like, it's like, blah, 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 all the gobbledygook, and then the actual thing. Like, then this 3 minutes of, like, this beautifully aligned heart and brain speaking. Like, yes, just cut that section out, except we didn't record it and I'm talking to my mom. But, you know.
Just call the NSA, see if they have a copy.
Or the Canadian equivalent.
No, the NSA probably has it.
Okay, cool. It's on Google devices. Yeah, no, fair enough. Like, come on. I just need recording of me saying this thing that's going to take you down in a few decades. Just give it.
Just don't listen to it, but just send it up.
Just send it. Which is part of this whole thing, is how many people have amazing ideas and projects, but aren't. It's beyond not comfortable being on camera, because I get that one. That is, but like how many people I know who are like, I'm here to save the planet, but also don't look at my name, don't look at my face, don't, because someone could come kill me. And I'm like, those things can't be in a lot. Like, you need to put yourself out there enough so that it's safe enough for all. Like, it's hard enough with me putting myself out here constantly. And I had to get through the layers of that. Like, I'm still okay with my kid being on camera. You know what I mean? I don't show where I live, and there's certain things that I'm definitely to keep it safe. But like, I'm on camera and it's hard. I can't imagine being like, no, not my face, not my name. And then how does my idea get out there? I'm like, with you and your face and your name.
Yeah. Well, and if your idea is any kind of world-changing idea, trust is such an important factor. And like, who are they trusting in that case? Mm-hmm. Like a voice on a screen? Yeah, that can't be gamed at all.
We live in that. We are so getting close to the world. Thank God for Bentley and Adriel, because like the stuff that's coming out with COVID-19, just all of it, right? It's like, how dare you're stupid to believe that. I'm like, any documentary can be done nowadays. And exactly what you're saying about the other side can be said about your side. And we're getting in such a sense of like senselessness that everything can be doctored and you can't trust anything, that we have to figure out trust at a higher level. Because it's just like, I don't know, just because it was in my kid's textbook doesn't mean it's true, even though it was printed like years ago. I don't know what's true and what's not true. How do we know?
Well, and I think that's really been a big shift in the last 10 to 20 years, where prior to that, like, I think we still mostly trusted experts. We knew we couldn't really trust governments or media, but we're like, at least the experts do it. And now we're like, oh, that's gone too.
Well, I mean, it's really video and voice is gone, right? Like, it's seen someone say something, right? Like, as much as I don't like Trump and he says enough asinine things, he doesn't. Like, you could get a Trump to say basically anything. And so if I see him saying something ridiculous, I'm going to assume it's true. It might not be, right? It might be a bot. It might be anything.
Right.
And it's like, so what do we trust? I trust 7 people recording the same Trump at a rally if I can have access to that, but not, and even then they could be in cahoots and sitting in different places. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, I need some other people to also know that's going on so they can all, wait, I'm here too. And that's not happening. I'll start recording. Right. And seeing
and then in those cases when they disagree, the technology to spot deep fakes and audio editing and all that sort of thing. So that it's, a single part where you're like, if it's here, it's as close as we can reasonably be to being sure it's true.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot. Several of my friends on Facebook have been basically saying you shouldn't trust anybody, especially in an official capacity. And their goal seems to be to sow distrust. And it's been triggering me. But I'm not sure if that's a good response for me. Because realistically, it is good to be suspect and to think through. So I'm working through, why am I so frustrated when I see someone kind of doubt, well, some of my friends just blatantly aren't wearing masks and stuff like that, and they seem to think it's a conspiracy, which no doubt a lot of the information is wrong. But it seems to me that their emotional goal is to sow distrust between people. But I don't think that's accurate. I think that's my emotional reaction to what
I
they're
think
doing.
it's partially true, but I think they're trying to prove their own distrust, because they're starting from a place of I don't trust, and so they're saying, here's why you shouldn't either. I haven't trusted these MFers for the last 20 years. Here's why I'm right.
It's a really interesting time to be here right now on this planet.
And to be honest, the governments have not done a great job in countering those people. Like they've been inept and corrupt, and like using this as blatantly times are like in Canada changing the gun laws and all this for like, I can kind of see why, but also maybe enforce the gun laws we have. Like there's a bunch of stuff like, and you can see across all countries, like all the states, they're not doing a great job at trying to say, hey, we're not using this as an excuse to further government overreach. They're definitely doing that. But now the question is there also a reason for them to do it? Of course. But then how is the average person supposed to tell the difference?
Yeah, and that's where it's like the average people need to get together and create that difference. So that, because that is like, I'm mainly talking about this documentary called The Plandemic that came out, which if you watch it, is somewhat convincing. And if you're against it, you can absolutely find flaws in it. And it's like the documentary itself is not, and then of course the Michael Moore documentary as well that came out with discounting the Green New Deal basically in the green industry, and then the environmental is like, this is the best we have, stop discounting it. Like this whole, people yell at each other for being stupid and you're too naive and you're trusting, but there's no way to assess that. I'm like, so we're really like the actual solution is we all do our own individual research and then get together and fight about it? Is that really what we're doing? Like, that doesn't help, because we can fight all day about whether we should wear masks. If you're not wearing one, that's putting me at risk. And, like there's the actual action that we want people to take, i.e. wearing masks or staying inside, social distancing. And then if they're not, that like they're wrong because they didn't come to the same conclusion I did. They're basing it on the wrong facts. It's like, well, how do I know my facts are right? We need to take it, and like, they don't trust the governments, they're overreaching. I totally am in alignment, and please wear a freaking mask. Like, and that's where like it's interesting time to be alive, because those of us who knew not to trust the government and the media are actually the people who are simultaneously accept, yes, like how do we hold them not respond, like how do we let them not have the overreaching fascism that's coming about, and to collectively listen to our best advice that's out there. And it's by like building that trusted information system that we require. That doesn't, because even if the government created one, we're not going to trust it. Even if the media created one, we're not going to trust it.
Yeah, like I do laugh as the things on Facebook where now they're starting to do fact checking, and I'm like, no one is going to trust Facebook to do that. 0 people. And yeah, everything I've been seeing is just been people being like, oh, Facebook is trying to censor us. They're like, yeah, I kind of figured that was how this will.
Yeah, it unfortunately kind of feeds into their concerns.
Yeah.
So it's not. The net result isn't always positive.
And it seems like, whenever we do our own research, if we're doing it off of any of our own devices, the algorithms are really based on our own likes and dislikes.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're doing research in this pre-selected, like, oh, right. Look, there's lots of gold in these hills because I just got this one sample that was half gold that somebody curated for me, and now that's not actually what's out there. It's also very true. So even if you do the research, there's tools working against you to maybe limit the pool of research that you'll be presented.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, and that frustrates me when people say, "Oh, you need to do the research on these questions. Why is this happening? Why is this happening?" So like, no, that doesn't work. I'm going to come to different conclusions than you. And I don't even know what conclusions you're getting at. All I know is that you're hoping that other people will be drawn to conspiracy, to your conspiracy, because they'll Google and they'll happen to get the same results, or they'll do an internet search. It's
And
very
further to that
frustrating. I
point,
just kind of want to tell them, don't say, do me the research. Tell me what you believe and tell me why.
Yeah. Or point me to the research you used.
Right.
Like, even there, did you actually do research? Because 98% of the people that say that, they didn't do the research either. They read an article from somebody who knew somebody who, had a brother-in-law who's like someone else, had once walked by somebody who read the research.
Yeah. Yeah, and realistically, though, I haven't done full research. And they can't share their opinions flat out because they will get... because they'll be attacked by people. And I will be one of those people attacking them. Because I think that's stupid. But I'm just saying...
If somebody says, here's the research I followed, then they're being too open, and now they open themselves up to attack.
If someone doesn't believe that vaccines are safe, like probably my father, he posted something from this book saying that, from the 1920s, saying how vaccines are dangerous and stuff. And I said... Well, I actually did an interview with him and stuff, but in no time would he say, he says, I just think people need to look at it. And I'm like, you're a chicken. But rightfully so. It was rational for him to not put all of his, it's too dangerous to put all of your information on the table, which is unfortunate. But I find it very frustrating because he and I cannot reach an understanding because everything has to be, a lot of the information has to be kept secret. Hopefully, Adriel and I's tools will help with that. But I've been frustrated by it recently.
Very helpful is having tools to do those kind of things, because we're never going to be able to tackle a subject without emotions involved, and to be able to see what does somewhat unbiased science say, and then make that science as unbiased as possible, knowing who funded it, why all this research, what research is missing, because that is a big piece for me. As someone who has looked into the vaccines and thought I would vaccinate my kid and then didn't because of all the missing research that the doctors could, I was like, right, there's no research showing it's not safe. You also have done no research for 10 or 20, 30 years, like on the long-term effects of it. That's big, huge missing science. And there's things that show that dogs and cats and horses and pigs are negatively affected by them, but none for humans. And it's like, okay, that's problematic. And then things where it shows, I don't know, remember what vaccine it was that gives you acne, and they took it out. And I was like, I think I'd rather have acne than measles. But at the same time, it's like, they were like, well, that shows it in a bad light, so we have to retract it. It's like, that's bad science, really bad science.
Well, that study was from UBC, right?
I think so. Yeah,
I think that was the one. I read a story that I couldn't find again in the future. That was they published a study, and it was like the most innocuous thing. It was something like it causes acne. The most like, who cares? But yeah, they were asked to unpublish it, and I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, which is, but having like the what was my point? I don't know, something else. It lost.
Yeah, one of the challenges so many people are having to play mental games, just like in voting and politics and stuff. Like, sometimes you don't vote for the person you want to win because that vote will cost someone else, because we do first past the post. Same thing in information sharing is that, like the government came out and said, well, you shouldn't wear a mask because it doesn't protect you. And then 6 months later, they reversed. Well, it's because when they did that first statement, or at least I think, I could be wrong, that they were trying to convince people to do something, so they exaggerated the situation, right? If they'd just been honest and said, there's not enough stuff in the United States right now for all of our medical care people, so even though it would help slow down the spread to wear a mask, we're going to ask you to stay home instead and leave that equipment for them, and here's 100%. The logic why. But also, if they had tried that message, it probably wouldn't have hit, because they don't have a communication tool that can get that level of clarity out. Right. So they're in a tough situation where they kind of have to be manipulative, and it comes and bites them in the butt. Yeah. That exact, because being transparent, if they had done that, because you know what then happens? There's a run on all the masks. People are like, oh, they're like, because it's like, right, people who are like, okay, it's more important for the nurses to have them, I'm not going to have them. Then, you know what I mean? But other people are like, wait, no, there's what? Okay, I need to stock up then. And I don't even think it's a bad response. It's a natural response. Yeah.
to stock
And
up on
it's a
scarce
collective
things.
it's a collective action issue that too also, because each individual, it is the right decision for us to go and buy a mask. That is the
Right.
correct decision selfishly for us. But now we as a group, how can we as a group say, okay, we're all going to take a risk to have a greater potential for all of us later? But the risk only lowers if everyone does it. But if any small group of people doesn't do it, it's better for all of us to not do it. And that's that collective action issue that people are
The
kind of
mask
working
thing
on.
is super weird because it doesn't protect you. It protects everybody else. So like Trump and Pence are like, well, we don't have it. I'm like, yeah, and you're getting tested every day so you can keep your masculinity and not wear a freaking mask while telling everyone else to wear a mask. Put on a freaking mask. It's not because people are like, oh, just let everyone else go about their business, and the people who are susceptible, people who this is a higher risk for, can wear a mask and gloves. But the mask isn't to protect you. It's to protect everybody else if you have it. It does not protect you from viruses in the air. It protects these viruses from going in the air.
I mean, in the end, it protects you a little bit because if you have relatives and if you have friends, they're not dying. And then also society-wise, there's knock-on effects. But yeah, there's long-term benefits and short-term benefits. In the short-term,
yeah, but meaning that like actually what's best for me is everybody in society to wear a mask and me to give up my last one, right? If I'm looking out for me. Because you guys are going to infect me,
right.
And at the same time, I want to hoard them, right? Like it's like it's so counterproductive, and at the same time, it's like right, just use anything. It doesn't need to be sterile. It doesn't need to be. It's just about blocking it a little bit, and then all the people who are like constantly on like this, and then they'll let it be down here, and you're like that's not, or they'll be up
I'm
here,
like,
and they'll like pull it down to talk. And you're like,
I went to Costco. It was so bad. Like a quarter of the people had it like this, and and then all the workers had them, and they kept having to go like this to talk. And like, why even have them?
Right? Yeah. Yeah, it's just theater at that point.
Yeah.
I was going through a drive-through, and they have people, I guess, to get the cars through faster. They have workers standing out there, and one of them had it here. I said, first of all, let's not have the workers there. We can take a little extra time sitting in our car and going up and talking through the machine rather than talking to a person, a foot from my car. I don't understand. I would rather sit in my car longer and be sterile.
Yeah, totally. I think the other interesting thing about that conversation around the government, sort of like kind of innocently enough being like, hey, don't wear masks to try and do it. It made sense, but they were also covering up their own incompetence because they shouldn't have even had to do that. There should be a civilian supply and a stockpile. And everyone knew this, or at least all the governments knew this, and nobody had it.
We had a stockpile in the U.S. and we shut it down a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And then now the stockpile that is there is apparently for the federal workers and not the states. And I mean, everyone has their different way of interpreting it based on what they want. And
I also find like we're in a very specific pandemic, right? This respiratory virus that you stay 6 feet apart from people. And it's like everyone's yelling at the government, like, you didn't plan for this. And you're like, right, because you know how many thises there are? Like, truly, there's every kind of pandemic. There's every kind of natural disaster. There's terrorists. There's, like everything. So yeah, what we actually need is people who care about the terror, the everything, to be thought, like, to give thought experiment. What do we do in this? And what do we do in this? Now we're bringing those people forward to be like, ooh, you knew this was going to happen before it happened. So you must like, it's like, no, you just picked the people who were the right horsemen of the apocalypse, right? They picked the right horseman that was going to happen. They didn't necessarily know that other people were like, well, we knew something was happening.
Yeah.
Like the people need to know that our governments can handle any catastrophe. They can't. The issue is we need to know what every catastrophe is and then what the plan is, and we need to plan it because top down, then they're like, well, fiscally, like this is bringing our fiscal and our healthcare together, right? Like all of the things we couldn't do for decades for people are now going by the wayside, right? Like even people fighting for UBI and stuff, but thinking about like classroom sizes. You know how long teachers have been fighting to bring down their classroom sizes, and now all of a sudden they're like, well, we're 6 feet apart. So if we want kids back in here, we need this. So we're going to need more teachers. We're going to need more classroom. We're going to need. Now there's money for it. Wait, how is that possible? Now all of a sudden everyone's doing remote learning, whereas I, like in my job working for the government, I couldn't do it from home, which is one of the reasons I wasn't able to do it. Everyone I used to work with is now working from home. And it's like, yeah, because now all of a sudden it's okay to have the social insurance number at your house, right? Because it wasn't, and I get it. It made sense both ways. And yet now we're seeing all this stuff. And so now if I went back and was like, hey, how about I can work from home? I think they'd have less of a reason to say no because we did it during the pandemic. But like, it's all these fiscal policies coming up against our healthcare ones. And like, now we're like, now long-term, we need to plan for risk. Got it.
Yeah. Well, I think also an important thing that I think gets lost in the whole conversation, like as much as I'm not a fan of really any government, the conversation that I've heard for all governments is like, oh, you were warned and did nothing. The thing I never hear along with that is, okay, but how many warnings did they get? And how are they weighted? Are they told 7,000 things a day? Here's the 7,000 things that could go wrong. And one thing on January 17th, that one item, that's what ended up happening? Or was it they were told time and time and time again, this was the only thing that was really being brought up? Those are two very different scenarios where I don't really... We
all were told about this in December and January, right? We all could have put stock in respiratory stuff. We all could have been stock, like... But they're the government, they're the authority, and they better, like, it's right. How many things do they need to plan for, and then what is planned for? And so I want to give, we're coming up to the hour, I want to give Shiloh a chance to say something. Sorry, she unmuted and muted.
I mean, it's a little off topic, but not really. I was just wondering about your guys' projects and if you see a timeline, is there like, could you have your projects finished in a year, let's say? What do you guys think?
I mean, in my case, the project will never be done because it's a fight against misinformation, right? So if I build something, the people who want misinformation to come out there, they'll adjust and do something else. We'll have to go over that. So it's going to be like sort of a continual battle. But I think, yeah, in under a year, if development starts now and, there's a decent pickup in audience, I think it could, be a fairly strong tool in a year.
And mine is kind of in private beta right now with one person, and so I'm going to grow that. And I hope to be sharing the content more widely in the future over the next month or so, and then I only have a year's runway, so something's going to either I'm going to find funding or I'm going to get a real job. But yeah, so I hope to find some funding in the next 6 months and then have people start using it. I don't know the future vision of the tool where people can actually just kind of go in and add their feedback, and it would be a real community system. Maybe a while because the moderation tools will take quite a bit of work, and I just don't have the justification for that yet. But something usable and launched to the public in the next several months, hopefully. Not in time, not enough to affect the upcoming election in the United States, which I have a friend who's built a similar tool, and he is really pushing for us to have a material effect on the election in the U.S. And I am doubtful.
Yeah.
It's pretty soon.
Yeah.
My timeline is both. I mean, anytime you get, once we have 10,000 people, then every project, even if it takes 6 months to make it and we start one every 6 months, everything can snowball very rapidly. And it's already happening now, right? We're already doing solution raisings. We're already bringing people together for projects. We're already doing, so like it's happening. And at any point we get a threshold of people involved, it can happen even more rapidly. And once you have the 10,000 people in a process, it's about figuring out that process and tweaking it. It'll never be done. But having the first iteration of an agile process, we already have it. Like solution raising is it, and then getting people together to do the process. So how about you, Shiloh? What do you see for a timeline for yours?
I suppose I feel like if I did connect with someone like Raymond, who would look at my design, I guess, and I guess I'd need to talk with him, but I would think I could probably do it within a year. And I only ask because, ideally, I'd love to have art exhibition where I was able to help people introduce these types of things. And so I'm trying to give myself probably a year or less as well goal to establish that. And in my end, it's a little bit different because I have to then find venues to apply for. And I'll have to probably apply for grant money, that kind of thing, through different art associations. So it's kind of a lot of that kind of work. But I do feel like I could probably have enough art for a show within a year for sure. I have quite a bit. So that part, just a thought. If you guys are ready, maybe I'll be able to share your ideas.
Awesome. Right, we are at the hour. Should we say goodbye to YouTube and end it for this week? And I will post out all the videos this tomorrow, Sunday, yeah, and then send those as well. Post them on the Facebook groups.
Sounds good. Bye,
All right,
YouTube.
bye YouTube.
Bye, dude.
That's all.